No, that's Mama's girl. All right, there we go. Michael Jordan.
Okay, perfect. So we'll get going. Thank you for joining, everyone. Really appreciate it. We're going to start off with a quote tonight. And this one is by Michael Jordan. So he said, "Never say never, because limits, like fears, are often just an illusion." So as we go through the presentation tonight, let that resonate, let it sink in. And then I also wanted to bring up some of the tough news that we had over the weekend. So
Nice.
as we all heard, Woody had passed away. Woody's a Seattle legend, great referee and a better person. This picture is probably one of my favorites. It's taken by Mark Myers, but every time I would see Woody, this is how he would greet me. So just a great person. Absolutely love him, and just wanted to give him some time here during the meeting. So take some time, think about Woody tonight, and just continue living how he would, which was every day was great for him. He made everybody's day brighter. I know he made mine. He was always so positive. Just had a very positive impact on our whole group. And for us younger guys, it was always fun to watch him work, and then eventually get to work with him and learn how he managed the game and was able to communicate and just show us the way, per se. I mean, he gave a lot of his life to officiating and giving back to our group. So just wanted to give him a recognition here, and he's going to be dearly missed. So with that being said,
I was going to say thanks a lot for that, man. I shared that with a lot of the folks down south here, especially Buddy Horton, because he and Buddy worked in the local associations and the PAC together, and just shared the information. But the words you said were very, very well said. I appreciate that. He was a great guy, and I know everything that he gave to officiating. So thank you guys for sharing too.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate that. With that, I'm gonna pass the screen over to Rod and let him start his presentation. Again, thanks for being here tonight. I know times have been tough with the news that we got, and then the state shutting down as well. So again, thank you.
Is the floor mine now, Bob?
Yeah, go ahead, Rod.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for taking time out of your night to come and join us to talk about game management. And I do understand that there are 2 game management sessions. So there will be some things that I kind of just gloss over. Beau covers some stuff. Beau couldn't be here tonight. And I know we've already talked about teasing him because he couldn't give up his time today, but he has a great reason. He is coaching his, I believe, daughter's soccer practice tonight. So anyone willing to stand out in the rain and the wind and the cold tonight for 90 minutes with a bunch of little kids earns my respect. So
Really?
He gave me his notes, and we're going to talk about that. And so let's kind of just jump right in. If you have questions, throw them into the chat, or you can step in, I guess, which is fine with me too. So we can see that?
Yep.
The same slide that I'm sure we've seen a million times. So Beau Brooks, and this is a little bit about Beau. Beau obviously is one of the best young referees, best referees, period, that we have in the association. And there's this incredible group of young officials. And actually, they're not so young anymore. They're young to me because I'm really, really old. But Chuck and Bob and Beau and Travis, there's a whole group, really exciting to see. And you guys can never get to Division I, because if you go to Division I, that means we're going to lose you in high school, and then Bob Holloway is going to have to come back. Jeff Shelton's going to have to put on stripes. John Lindsay's going to have to put on stripes. And that actually would be kind of cool. So here's a little bit about Beau. He's married. He's got 2 boys, been a member of PNBOA since 2012. He does CC ball. He has done a lot, as you can see, in state regionals. He's worked a couple of championship games. He's done NWAC playoffs. He's a clinician. He does all-star games. And you haven't had a chance to work with Beau. He's just a great partner. He's always present, and he's a great teammate, and he's a great leader. And so I'm really pleased that we were able to share this presentation. And let's see, let me get out of that. Another Michael Jordan quote: you have to expect things of yourself before you can do them. And what we're talking about here is, it's goal setting, and you have to kind of know where you want to go in basketball. And in order to do that, you got to expect these things and then work on the skills and develop them and get to the places you want to go. Whoa. Keep it simple. All right, I asked Bob, and Bob can step in and explain the geese to me. Bob, are you here?
I am. So basically, Beau sent this over to us, and Rod and I were talking about this, and I thought it was because geese flew in a pack, and Rod and I were both overthinking this a little bit. So Rod said the reason he put Beau said the reason he put the picture in here is because we need to keep it simple. So it doesn't matter if one wing of the geese is longer than the other. Overall, just don't overthink what you're doing and keep it simple here. And always remember that you're here for a reason. So this picture means nothing, basically. It just was here to kind of mess with you and then get back to the guideline of keeping it simple.
Okay, well, it completely messed with me because I do understand the philosophy, though. We do have to keep it simple, but the only birds I know are Seahawks, and the birds I know don't play defense, at least in the past couple of weeks. So there you go.
Go Hawks.
He says, have fun. Times we need to take it serious, especially atypical situations. And I really want to talk a lot about atypical situations. And I just said that because I wanted Chuck and Jeremy to just get mad, because they got mad last week when people talked about atypical situations. Perception versus reality, smiling, professional. We want to be pleasant. And then, of course, we need a photo from like 1984 of me and Matt Mason. 5 keys: stay in your primary, referee the defense, call the obvious, don't guess, trust the system. Game management, stay in the box. And what Beau's talking about there is we don't want to start making things up when we're officiating. The best way to manage a game is do what we know. And in my work with the Seattle Seahawks, that's something they stressed, especially during their Super Bowl years. I remember Chris Richard telling the Legion of Boom the morning of the game, don't go out there and try and give 110% tonight. Don't give 105%. Don't give 101%. You give 100%. Do what you know how to do. Do what you are trained to do. Don't try and cover up for your teammate or your partner. So stay in your box. Our mechanics and our floor positioning keep us anchored as a group. So those are our basics. Those are the utensils with which we're going to eat. We can't start making those kinds of things up. Be present. Who are you? We all have lots of different roles. We are employees, referees, cousins, uncles, aunts, brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, nephews, nieces, husbands, wives, girlfriends. We have lots of roles. And so, what Beau's talking about here is know who you are and bring those things to your game so that we don't become robotic. And that's something that I'm going to talk about a little bit later. And then cut out the distractions. How do we communicate? We obviously first communicate with our whistle. Then we communicate with our body language. We talk to players and coaches. We must have as much correct information as possible. And in the heat of a game, I think that's really important. Beau and I had a couple of games last year where we had some clock issues, and everything we talked about is what's the correct information. And the clock wasn't working, and we were kind of guessing on time, and there were a lot of officials in the crowd. And one thing that I didn't do that I should have done was look up at those officials, and I know they would have given us a really good estimate of the time. Do not bring doubt. And if you bring doubt, we're human. Like, we're gonna have doubts, and we're going to second guess ourselves. And the most important thing there is, at least while we're at the gym and in the game, we have to have the confidence to present, to have the courage of our convictions. So your strong whistle, your mechanics, your hustle, and then this is an interesting one at the bottom here. Don't be afraid to admit when you are wrong. And that kind of scales, I think, for younger officials to veteran officials. Really, really old guys like me, we have a little bit more leeway to say when we were wrong. When I was coming up, if I said I was wrong to a coach, the answer might be, I know you were wrong. And that's kind of not the conversation you want to have, right? Like, coach, I screwed that up. And the coach, instead of saying, okay, I guess you screwed it up, or whatever. What you don't want to do is say, yeah, I was wrong, and have the coach scream at you. Yeah, you were wrong. And the other thing you don't want to do when admitting you're wrong is, like, admit you're wrong 4 times in a night. So even if you're wrong 4 times in a night, and we all are wrong 4 times in a night, we don't want to admit that.
Yeah, and Rod, if I could
Again,
jump in on that really quick. Yeah, and then as we get together as a crew, kind of what you were referring to with that clock situation, if you were to ask me and I didn't have the information, then having the courage to simply say, hey, Rod, I don't know. Like, don't make up your answer again, just be honest. And then there was a point in the chat here. Jeff had said that the coach agreed last week, be honest. So I think that's kind of the resonating theme from that last slide, is just be honest.
Great point. Great point. So here we want to be like-minded, especially in our gray areas. We create flow to the game. We don't interrupt play with a bad whistle. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later, about knowing kind of when good whistles and bad whistles come. It's not just the how, sometimes it's the when. Let athletes be athletes. Beau wants to remind us that, we want the best players who play the best and the best teams to win the game. We don't want arbitrary things other than athletic talent and skill and strategy, and the team that should win wins. And if they don't win, it's not because of us. So we want to let the athletes be athletes. Be a student of the game. So you kind of want to know what the offense is running. And I think this is a key point. You don't have to know the exact X's and O's, but we have to know when it's person-to-person defense versus a zone defense. And we want to know, by the same token, when a press is going to come. If it's a half-court trap, is it a trap designed to trap the ball or steal the ball? And sometimes it's a disruption trap, and sometimes it's an aggressive trap. And sometimes it's we want to slow down the other team's transition kind of trap. So, there's lots of different layers to that. And so the more we know about basketball, obviously about the game itself, the better off we are. Understand the time and effort. This is their job. Coaches, players, it's their game. And that's something I'm going to allude to later. Be approachable. Your demeanor on the floor will separate you. And Beau is great at this. I've seen Beau in some really tough situations, and he never really changes. He's never too high and he's never too low. Me, on the other hand, you can tell on my face, and it's still something I work on. You can tell when I'm pissed off, and that's probably not the most productive thing. So this is me. Here's my bio. I reffed so long that I refereed when we had collared shirts, but not John Lindsay, big fella, reminded me that he and I have not worked the game. So I'm not that old. Star Thornley was my substitute teacher at Kellogg Middle School in 7th grade. I ejected Masvita from a Park League game, which is kind of one of my career highlights. I don't know if Maz is on the call tonight, but I think we were arguing which of the two of us had short man disease, but I had the whistle, so he left the gym. I once had a game interrupted by an earthquake, and that was at the state tournament, and that was a little nuts. And I'm still having fun officiating. And every year, about October, I kind of think about, do I have the fire? Is this something I still want to do? And the thing that brings me back to it, not only is the basketball, but it's each of you. It's the men and women that I get to work with and the camaraderie that we develop. And I know that's why a lot of you guys are doing it as well. So the thing that I want to talk about is game management is an art, not a science. I think positioning and mechanics are a science. Angles, windows, looks, grayers. We can kind of break that down into what we're supposed to do. But with game management, I think there's a lot more gray to it, and there's a lot more art. And each of us, because we are human, bring something different to the table. So I don't manage a game the way Bob would manage a game, the way Mike Lloyd would manage a game, the way Doug would manage a game, the way Jillian manages a game. And so what I want to aim to do here in the next 15 or 20 minutes is kind of talk about the different ways I approach it, because you've heard kind of some thoughts from Beau. You're going to hear from Leslie and someone else next week. And so it's not, we want to be in this position. That's not how we game manage. It's very individual, and we learn through trial and error what works for us. And so I want to share with you kind of the things that work for me and pass them on. And hopefully you can incorporate maybe one or two things into your game, something resonates with you, or something I say is like, oh my God, I could never do that, which is fair. So the first thing is we let the game come to us, right? Like we talk a lot about like, it's my game tonight. This is my game tonight. And I remember doing a game, I think it was with Scott Federley, and I don't remember our other partner. And in our pregame, we decided, we don't have to go out here and attack this game. And especially if you have a really competitive game or a quote unquote big game, and it's for first, whether it's in a B league or whether it's in 4A, if it's gonna, we kind of get really amped up, and we don't have to go out and put our mark onto a game because we don't know what the game is going to be yet. So let the game come to you. We also, Beau touched on this. Who is the game for? We talk about our game, but it's not our game. It's the player's game. And it's the coach's game. And third, it's still not our game. Those parents have driven those kids all over the place for fall league and spring league, well, non-pandemic times. So we are the stewards of the game. So we are, I liken it to, we're like the judges at an orchestra contest or a debate contest. We are like the chaperones at the dance. And what that means is we're the grown-ups in the room. And we have to remember we are managing often with school games, kids, boys and girls still. And I think when we keep that in mind, that we are there to help the game go so that the players can decide who wins versus going out and having an attitude of, I have to control this game. So I try and keep that in mind. So starting with pregame, actually, I think there's something that I think about a lot, which is a pregame. And it's something that Matt Hasselbeck talked about when he was the quarterback of the Seahawks and something the Seahawks do is they tap in. So, and we've all done this on our sports teams or whatever. You tap something, and with some teams it's a lunch bucket or a hard hat or it's a sign on the wall. And that tap in is a mental cue that we are now focused on the task at hand. And so, we leave work or home and we drive to the gym to go to the game. At some point, the fight with our boyfriend or girlfriend, or being mad at our spouse for leaving the dishes in the sink, or my boss was an ass today and I got screamed at. Like at some point, we get to the gym, we take that breath. Maybe it's, and for all of us, it's different, but I urge you to choose a marker. Whatever that marker is it when you enter the gym to observe the game? Is it when you go into the locker room? Is it when you unzip your gym bag or your suitcase? There's got to be a point that consistent every time we go to work that we understand, okay, now I am basketball. And it's not to say we weren't thinking about it before or that we can't think about it until we do that. But by having that tap in moment, it'll help us focus and kind of crystallize ourselves to our task. So now, pregame warmups, and I'm going to fly through this because I think it's going to get covered later. We're watching the players' positions, we're checking for uniforms, and I think it's really also important now to check the size of the basketball. And shot clock used to be something that we'd have to check on, but I know multiple games. I still just work boys basketball, and so there have been multiple games where, the ball, they give us the ball for the game, and it's a smaller ball. So make sure we check the basketball. When I'm in my warm-ups, I think it's important too that we are warming up, and I'm not talking about jogging and stretching, but if you watch me during a warm-up, I will spend a couple of minutes in the trail position watching a layup drill, or especially if they're doing like a 3-on-2 or a 3-on-3 drill in warmups. I'll stand at the trail position and I'll watch either players take shots, and I'll think about, okay, feet to the ceiling, and how am I going to look at this picture? And then I'll take a couple of steps down to what would be the slot position, and I'll watch warmups from the slot position. We're talking about 3-person here. In 2-person, I would just be in that trail position and think about, watch one player. Okay, when the ball goes over here, okay, that's my off ball. Okay, it comes over here, this is my on ball. So that I'm paying attention and I'm warming up mentally while the players are warming up. Clocks and buzzers, check those. We note our danger areas. So captain's meeting, and I'm going to stop on captain's meeting because I think we all treat captain's meetings differently. A lot of us, it's just a chance to figure out names and numbers. And here's the thing, and my partners, everyone who I work with knows that I'm terrible at names, I'm terrible at numbers. I'm like, yeah, show me your number. And I will literally forget this by the time I turn around who the captain is. And the observers are like, why didn't you go to the captain? And I'm thinking, I will answer honestly, well, I should have. I don't answer honestly, well, I had no idea who the captain is. But I also do kind of know that I got better at captains when I started doing this. I get the captains together and I say, look, you guys are the captains because you are the leaders of your teams, right? And I always say right because I want an acknowledgement. So I want the guys or the girls to nod and say, yes, I'm the captain, I'm the leader. And then this is what I say. There's going to be a point tonight where we need your leadership. Can we count on your leadership in that time? And then I look at them and I get them to nod. And if they don't nod and they're looking away, I'm like, 13, can I count on your leadership when we need it tonight? Yes. Look on this side, 12, yes. So now we've created a contract, and creating that contract makes it easier later when we have maybe a tense situation to go, hey, 12, I need help with 22. He's being kind of a knucklehead. Is that something you can help me with? And so we've created a contract with the captains. The coaches, it's brief, pleasant, professional. The clock's winding down. Most of the time, they're trying to get their team in, and it's just kind of a say hi. I never ask if they have any questions because if they have questions, they're never good. So that's just me. I hope someone comes up with a different or better answer for that. And I think coaches meeting. A coach's introduction, if we play basketball, when we play basketball this year, it's going to be a wave. We're not going to go over and shake hands. It's going to be kind of a wave and a nod. Okay. the national anthem. And this is another thing, I think, like warm-ups that we can kind of tend to sleepwalk through. But I personally use the national anthem as my last chance to tap in that I will, if I'm staring at the flag or I'm staring at the floor, I'm kind of going through a checklist in my mind. And I'm going through three things. And one is be patient. Two is take your time. And three is it could happen at any moment. And the happen at any moment is sometimes we get lulled into, this is just the beginning of the game. But I think I was photographing a game once where the tip, the ball got tapped off the jump ball and it went to the free throw line and there was a quick pass and the guy went to the rim and the other team had clearly scouted this play because he was met at the rim and we had a crash bang into the wall and people coming off the benches, and we were 3 seconds into a basketball game. So part of my anthem tap in is take your time, Rod, be patient, Rod, and remember, it could happen at any time. In game, Beau touched on this. Communication is key with our partners, our table, our coaches, and our players. I will also kind of create a contract with my table in our table in that I want acknowledgement. So I will tell the scorer, look, when we come over to report, I need you to nod when we give the numbers. And I know, and here's the thing, you give them credit. Like, I know you've done this for 20 years and I know you know what you're doing. But when I'm on the floor and I'm looking at a sea of faces, I need one face to nod and tell me that my information got to you. And that's on me, not on you. I need to make sure the information got right. And so sometimes I'll even wait. If you've seen me work, if a scorer is distracted or they're already writing a foul, I'll just stand there and wait. And if I remember the name, or I'll just, blow my whistle real quick, or I'll wave and I'll say, and you do look, and it's very polite. I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad, but it's preventative in that I don't want my game going upside down because we got a foul to the wrong player. So I think a lot of my game management art is I don't want my game to go upside down and sideways. So there's a lot of preventative. I use my voice to manage a lot. And that, again, is a very individual and very personal thing. If you're not a person that's comfortable doing that, that's okay. Like, ref with your whistle and ref with your mechanics. I try to use my voice a lot, especially preventatively. And it's often with bigs away from the ball who really just like to be physical. And I'll watch them and I usually let them be physical, but there's a point where I have to say something. And especially if they're locking in the post, and that's something, freedom of movement is a big thing. And we want to make sure that players have freedom of movement. I'll just literally say, let him run or let him move if he's locked him up, or don't lock him up, or let go. It's got to be quick. And it's got to be brief. So the whistle's out of my mouth. It's let go, let go, let go. And they know what I'm talking about. This is really important to me. Constantly take the pulse of the game. And this is kind of the art part where you've worked a number of games. And the best way to learn this game management stuff, and guys will laugh because they've never seen me do a rec game, but I did a million rec games to learn how to do this. You take the pulse of the game. You kind of got to know, we're at DEFCON level 2 right now. Everything's kind of cruising along. And then, substitute 7 came in and knocked substitute 7 for the other team into the bench. And now those two guys are mad and blah, 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 blah. So now temperature's rising. So we kind of always want to have a pulse. We want to have a feel. And it has nothing to do with the fouls we're calling sometimes, or the violations we're calling, or how we're calling a game. But we need to know that. So as we get through a game and we get to that final quarter, final 4 minutes, final 2 minutes, we kind of know where everyone's been coming from. Tempo is something that I use, and it's not something that we teach. It's something that I learned. And tempo meaning how quickly or how slowly we are putting the ball in play or shooting free throws. And most of the time I find myself quickening the tempo versus slowing it down. The only time I would slow down tempo is if we had maybe 3 minutes of just crazy turnovers in transition, one of those periods in a game where the ball's like going 90 feet one way and it's blocked at the rim, and now we're sprinting the other way and the ball gets knocked at half court and 4 players dive and it gets knocked to the corner and that player gets and he throws it 85 feet. Now we have a lay-in and a foul. Like, I might take an extra 30 seconds with the basketball, wipe it down, give everybody a chance to breathe. But most often I will use tempo to speed up a game. And what that means is, especially when we have chippy games, and we've all been there, right? Those chippy games where it's a foul and chippy and the players are going to walk by and brush each other's shoulder, brush their opponent's shoulder on the way to get their free throw spot. And the coach is chipping and the players are chipping and everybody wants, I'll just kind of give a signal like, let's go faster. Let's go faster. Let's just put the ball in play, because if they're playing basketball, then they're not chipping at us. They're not chipping at each other. I've had games where coaches are chipping at each other, but if the ball is in play or the free throw is being shot, we can kind of use tempo to our advantage to help manage the basketball game. So instead of 2.5 minutes of chipping during a long substitution and guys doing the, I want that free throw spot, no, let's switch. It's like, I'll just say to my partner, let's go. Just put that in play. We're bouncing the ball to shooter and off we go. So we're using tempo. Tense situations, and this is talking about technical fouls, essentially. Players are easy, they get a warning. And then, if I'm feeling nice and it's kind of an aggregate kind of temper tantrum that someone's throwing, I can tell a coach, hey, help me with 12. He's kind of losing it out here. And he's really, I almost teed him. I don't tell him. I know some officials have the ability to tell a coach, you should take a player out. I'm not that person. I don't have that skill set. I don't have that confidence. I don't have the respect to be able to tell a coach, take a player out. But I will say, that player is very close to a technical foul, and no coach wants that. And so that usually helps. Assistant coaches. And this is something that I see where I think we have a lot of trouble in games that I've watched and games that I've officiated, in games where I've gotten in trouble, is dealing with assistant coaches. Assistant coaches sometimes feel like they can just yell at us as much as head coaches. And the truth is they can't. Okay. That's why they're still assistant coaches. If they wanted a head coaching job, like, there are still head coaching, they'll get there. But until then, their job is to coach players. We have 10 players and 2 coaches that we're already dealing with. So we don't need to deal with assistants. And the quickest way to do that is you go over and you politely say to the head coach, hey, coach, I can't listen to your assistants all night because, 1, I can't hear you, and 2, we have our hands full on the floor. And, that's all it takes. And and sometimes I've even sacrificed an observation to keep my game, what I felt was being managed the right way. I think it was Stanwood and Garfield, and it was at BCC. And the assistant coach from Stanwood, who's a great guy, like, I like him, he was just going nuts. And he was screaming and yelling every time down. He didn't like me, he didn't like my partner, he didn't like my other partner. There's like nothing he liked. And he was really being distracting. And we had a timeout, and he was turned out of his timeout and yelling at me. And that's, I think, an easy technical foul, right? Is the assistant's yelling at you in the middle of a timeout. He's not even coaching. But I felt, and this is me, again, this is all individual, so I'm presenting this stuff so that you guys can figure out what works for you. For me, it was better to yell at him and just basically say, hey, turn around and coach. And then that obviously gets the head coach attention. And I said to the head coach, I said, if you don't take care of him, you're going to get punished. And that was it. That was the end of that. Head coach grabs assistant coach, yanks him by the shirt and says, get in the huddle. Post game, observer comes in and says, really, really unprofessional of you to be yelling at a coach during a timeout. We don't do that. And I said, oh, that's fair. Like, you're absolutely right. And he said, why did you do it? And I explained it. And he goes, well, you shouldn't do that. And fair. But I thought it would have been a really bad technical with 3 minutes left in the game to throw in a technical on an assistant for yelling me a timeout when I could prevent that and get everybody back on track. And I saw the head coach. I saw that team. They made state, and I saw them down at the state tournament. I was watching with Woody and Big Fella, and the coach came up to me and both of them, and they were like, he was like, hey man, I apologize. I said, he's like, I said, for what? He says, I got out of line and you had to warn me. And I said, look, I said, I don't care. Like, I don't care if you're yelling at me. I just have to, correct it so that we can get back to the game so that the players can decide this game. No one wants me to decide this game. No one wants you to decide this game, especially not in that way. Head coaches. One of the things I use, and I talk to coaches a lot, and I think that's something that's a benefit of being an old guy in the association. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm a good guy in the association, but it means that they're familiar with me, and especially a lot of the coach, I know them. But here's the thing with coaches. I don't see us using proximity enough. Proximity, the distance between two things. Sometimes we'll go over to a coach and he'll have a question and I'll say, I'll answer your question. And his question isn't a question. His or her question is yelling at me. And I'm like, that's not a question. Like, if you don't have a question, I'm not gonna listen to you. But I'm not gonna stand 2 feet and say that and just keep listening and yell at me. So what I'll do is I'll tell him or her, look, like, I thought you had a question, but clearly you don't. And I will step away from that coach. Say we're on a free throw, okay, and I'm in the trail. I'll step away from that coach to the midcourt line, 10 feet on the floor. Now, if he really wants to keep yelling at me, everyone can see him yelling at me. So my next step is I can put a warning in the book, or I can informal warning. And I'm not the best at this. My career has been marked by coaches I did not properly take care of. It's the worst part of my game. And I'm getting better in my 25th or however many years. I'm finally getting better at this, is that proximity, getting away, turning, between free throws, giving a coach a stop sign. Coach, stop, I've had enough. And that's what we used to do before book warnings. Now we have book warnings. Now, if I'm 15, 20 feet and this coach is yelling at me, now it's easy for me to put him in the book. And I'm not emotional. It's just tweet, tweet, tweet. That's a warning for the coach. And then the next thing's a T. And so what you've done there is you've kind of set the table, right? We've set the table. Nothing's a surprise. Not why did I get that T? No one in the stands is like, wow, why did that ref T that guy in a timeout? Like, I'm always kind of trying to set the table. And like an attorney, you're trying to build a case. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to insult any attorneys. So now we're going to talk about crunch time. And crunch time is, it's when we can screw up. It's when most of us screw up the most, and it's when we can't screw up. And the only way to get better at refereeing under pressure is to do it and to fail. It's just like any athlete. Like, you can't be great unless you fail. And so let's talk about kind of the things that I think about in crunch time. So time, score, situation. Everything is about time, score, situation in crunch time. Like, how much time is left? What's the score? What's the situation? Are we close to bonus? Are we close to double bonus? How many points are they behind? How much time is left? Is there a chance to play 2 for 1? Kind of any of those things. Michelle Obama famously said, when they go low, we go high. I think in officiating, when they go high, we have to stay even. And that's something we have to consciously think about as officials, because when the temperature amps up and the pressure starts to squeeze and things are coming to a boil, it's easy for us because we're human and we've just run for 30 minutes, we're tired, and so maybe we're cranky because the game's not going the way it should, and we're just catching a lot of heat. Here's the thing. everything goes up to the roof, up to the ceiling, we have to stay where we are. When they go high, we stay even. Hi, Jeff Shelton. If teams are taking timeouts at the end of a game, I want my crew to take a timeout too. I want us to meet. If they're talking about strategy and they're talking about time score situation, I think it's super important that we talk about time score situation and how we are going to approach it. And any of you who've worked with me in kind of these kinds of games has had me bring the crew together and say, and it's usually, hey, how are we? And it's usually, we're fine, we're good. Anything we need to talk about, let's talk about this. Like, what's the situation? What are we looking at? And then I say this almost every time, especially inside the last minute. And I say this to my partners. I say, let's let the players decide the game right up until we have to put a whistle. So let's not anticipate, let's not hurry, but let's try our best to let them decide it. And then I say this, I'm not saying that to you guys because I think you're not going to do it, or I'm saying it because I need to say it and I need to hear it. And I need to kind of absorb that into my system for the last 15 seconds of this game, because what we don't want to do is get caught up in that pressure and jump a whistle, right? We don't want to call an and one, a cheesy and one on a putback. We don't want to kind of have any of those types of calls. So if we remind ourselves, we get together and we talk about these things. We talk about, okay, like if there's going to be a foul, let's make sure we get the shooter. And I think one of the things talked about last week was anticipating, was it Bob? Do you guys have a thing where you didn't call a foul, right? Are you there, Bob? You guys didn't call a foul at the end of the game, or someone didn't call a foul and they had to explain it to coaches. There are times at the end of a game when we're expecting a foul. And so we don't want to call the foul until we see it, but we have to be prepared for all of those situations. Slow down when the pressure gets hot. And I think this is also really important, is we tend, because it's human, to go faster. And that's actually when we need to slow down. Trust your instincts. Your instincts are what got there. So this goes back to what I was talking about earlier with the not trying too hard and not giving 110%, but trust your instincts. You've all seen a million plays. You've all called a lot of games, whether it's rec ball or CY, whatever, youth league, middle school, AAU, like all of that comes to bear, and it's all within us so that we bring that to that last couple of minutes of a game. And then be present. And that's such a simple kind of trendy thing to say, but I work very hard at being present. And one of the ways to be present is to breathe. And so Beau and I had a pretty intense game last year. And the pressure was ramped up and the gym was pretty full. And we'd had some timing errors, we had some table errors, everyone's kind of hot. And we had a timeout. And I was like, I just took the timeout and I slowed my breathing down, and I did some box breathing, which is you count to 4 slowly on your inhale, hold for 4, exhale for 4. And I just did some slow breathing, just trying to slow myself down, because I didn't know what was going to happen in the last crazy minute and a half, but I knew it would be crazy and I didn't want to be crazy. So I was trying to slow myself down. And it's something that Corky and I do as photographers with the Seahawks. We're photographing a game and it's going to come down to one play and we need to get a picture of that play. Like, that's not a thing where you want to be ampy and you want to be anxious and you want to be hyper. That's when you have to slow everything down so that you can kind of do your job. Post game, breathe and let it go. We get in the locker room and it's over. We can let it go. We can breathe. Review with our partners. And it doesn't have to be a full review because we've just worked a game. If there's something super critical that needs a lot of explanation or thinking about, or rule book research for me, like Mike Lloyd never has that problem. Mike never has to go like, I need to go check the rule book, see if I got that right. Like, I always have to be like, did I get that right? Like, I think I got that right. But review with your partners, and we're emotional and the observers are coming in, the evaluators are they had to sit there and watch us do that. So the least we can do is give them their, like, let's listen and try and learn. And we're not going to agree with them all the time. But I will tell you, after doing this for so many years, like, they're right. I can't tell you how many times I walked out of a gym in the heat of the moment thinking that evaluator was full of shit, waking up the next morning going, oh, I get it. I understand. I can't wait to put that into my game next time. They have so much experience and so much value to give us. Very important. We talked about tapping in, right? We also have to tap out. And this is another Matt Hasselbeck thing. He said, you know, he played for Mike Holmgren, who was very hard on Matt, yelled at him all the time. You know, you'd have those games, especially back in those days, you know, where you might throw 3 interceptions or 4 interceptions, or you might just have a bad day at the office. But you know what? We had a bad day at the gym. We're still going to go home to our kids or our, you know, our partner. They don't want to hear about our game. Believe me. Like, even if they say they want to hear about our game, they don't want to hear about our game. Like, that's like someone going to play golf and being like, oh, let me tell you about my round. Like, oh, on 7, I hit a 9 iron to 12 feet, and then I made the birdie. Like, no one wants to hear that. Same thing. So we tap out. For Matt, he said there was a sign as he came across the 520 bridge to where he lived on the east side. And when he drove by that sign, that was his mental cue. Okay, let it go. Go home. Be husband. Be a dad. So for us, maybe that's when we pull into the garage, or when we lock the car, or when we stop at Dick's for a deluxe, or whatever it is. There's got to be a point where we mentally have to let it go, because otherwise the stress will be too much. Final thoughts. Remember who the game is for. This is something we talked about earlier. It's for the players, it's for the coaches, it's for the families. We are the people who manage the game. It's not our game. As much as we talk about my game, our game, it's truly not our game. We are stewards of the game. We are here to help the game move along. Without us, they couldn't have games. And so we're, you know, obviously we're a very valuable part of it, but we have to understand our role. Sports are a human endeavor. And what I mean is, players are human. There's 15 to 17-year-old boys and girls in high school. And I don't know if, for those of you who have teenagers, like, it's a wonder that that's the same kid at home who's screaming about something about the dishes, and then going and, you know, scoring 37 points, and she's grabbing 12 rebounds and dishing 6 assists. And then she's coming home in a fight with her sister. Like, it's a human endeavor. Coaches are human. We're human. Like, understand that. None of us is perfect. So the more we can kind of have that little extra inch of patience, I think the better. And Frosty Western, who was the coach at PLU or UPS? UPS? One of them. Division III football coach, one of the winningest coaches of all time. And they asked him all the time, like, why don't you go to Division I, or would you ever want to be in the NFL? And he said, you know, no. He said, what I tell my players is make the big time where you are, which means whatever level we're at, it's great to have goals. Maybe your goal is to be on the varsity list. Maybe your goal is to do a playoff game, or go to a state tournament, or do college ball. Make the big time where you are. And so that's same as being present and being where our feet are. So make the big time where you are. And the last part about that is, and I say this and I mean this, and I would be so cynical of myself 20 years ago, being like, oh, this asshole is going to tell me this. Like, we are not our assignment. And I learned this also in photography, because I worked at a newspaper, and everybody wants to shoot the big game or shoot the big spot news. Like, it takes all of us as an association to cover all of these games. And sometimes, you know, there's a natural disappointment because there's a big game that weekend. You wanted that big game and you didn't get that big game, but that's not a reflection on us as a person or us on official. That's just how it rolled. And so make sure we're not defining ourselves by what game we have. Like, that's the worst way to define ourselves. How we define ourselves is, how did I call my game today? How did I handle myself? What did I learn? How can I move forward and get better? And so that's really all I have. I'm here for lots of questions if anyone has them. I know Bob went like 2.5 hours last week, so I wanted to make sure that you guys got out of here by 7 o'clock. And so ask questions if you have them.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rod. I'm going to go ahead and allow participants to unmute themselves. So feel free to unmute and ask questions if you have any. And Rod, I knew you would sneak that quote in there, so good thing I didn't start with that.
Oh, I sneak it in there all the time. Because I think it's so important, and I think about it all the time because it actually applies to my photography and my officiating.
Oh, for sure.
Rod,
So are there?
Scott and Kelly, you did a wonderful job. Thank you.
Appreciate you, Scott. Are there any questions?
I got one question, and this is for anybody who can help me. So I started roughing, I don't know, 4 years ago, but I was traveling a lot, so I wasn't able to get to a lot of games, and then I got injured, and I wasn't able to get into a lot of games. And so this year I wanted to step up and start again. And then we had COVID. And so any suggestions for just getting back in the groove?
I would say just be, obviously the fact that you're doing this, like you might think it's not important, but it's super important. When I came up as a referee, there wasn't this. There was not the level of teaching and commitment to developing officials either new to the game or returning to the game. And I know guys like Scott and Agustavo will agree with me. Like they're just the level of training that Bob and all these guys are giving us is amazing. And so right now, this is the best way, is doing this and getting into your rule books. And, if there's basketball on TV, like I watched high school basketball on TV the other day and thinking about plays and situations. And then as boring as it sounds, I think getting into the casebook, especially when you're coming back to the game, is very important. Kind of going through weird situations in the casebook so that, again, we're trying not to get surprised.
Yeah, I would totally agree with Rod as well. And I'll kind of piggyback onto that. Great question, David, and thanks for getting back into it with us. I would say being a sponge as well. Rod alluded to evaluators or observers coming into the locker room after a game and just listening to their points and their takeaways. Again, you may disagree at the time, but as you let that resonate with you, may make more sense. And I mean, they're there to help us, not combat us, right? So taking some of those nuggets and then really thinking about them and trying to fail forward from those moments. So again, thank you. Anyone else?
Bob?
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Can you hear me? Hey, listen, I just wanted to take the moment and say thanks to all of you guys for all the hard work you've done. This is an excellent presentation, man, and a great learning tool. And certainly appreciate you having evaluators and all the officials be a part of this. One thing I was just going to share with guys just from experience, and I like what Rod has said earlier, and you guys know me, you still got to have fun at this thing, man. And I was going to say in these times, difficult times that we have right now, each and every one of you, just take a moment to understand, your families and everything that you got going on around you, to be able to officiate, to keep yourselves together, both physically, mentally, and just understand what you need to do each day, because it's very, very tough decisions. And thank you guys very much.
Thanks, Bob. Great points.
Rod.
What up?
Hey, I'm only chiming in real quick just to start bothering some of y'all. Y'all remember you talked about working big games. I mean, I can't even get a big game at Seattle Lutheran. Only Dave Agustavo gets those. Why is it I can't get those games? I say it all the time. I say, hold on. So I can't get the Seattle Lutheran. I can't get the Bellevue Christian. I can't get any of those games. Oh, look who's on there. Dave Agustavo gets those. Hey, look, it's not
Will,
even fair though,
remember-
Rod. It's not fair though, Rod. I'm dead serious about that.
Will,
It hurts
you,
though,
me,
for real.
and
It's fine.
you, me, and Woody went to Seattle Christian for a playoff game between Seattle Christian and Kings, and those coaches like, we don't even know these refs. And
I know.
We just got
Hey,
hell like all
I
night.
mean, do you understand
Hey,
how it
I wanna-
goes?
wait,
Like,
can
they
I-
don't even know me.
You know
But
what?
thank
There's
God for-
now that
But
you're
they know
on.
Dave though.
You know what, Will, now that you're on this call, can I tell a quick story? And this has to do with game management. This is something I actually want to talk about and I forgot, is that you can't let, and Randy Woing and I spoke about this earlier, you can't let a coach play one of you off of another. And there are cheesy coaches who will try and do that to you all night. Like, why is he doing that? Will and I did a game. It was Seattle Prep and O'Day, and the coach said to me quietly during the stoppage in play, referring to Will, should he be on this game? Is he ready for this game? And I got so angry during this timeout. I walked out to the free throw line. I turned around. I pointed at the coach in front of their entire student body, and I said, "Don't you dare ever question the qualifications or integrity of a crew. Don't do it." And if he could have walked out there and punched me in the face, he would have.
Oh, he was hot.
But we heard later his principal talked to him and said, "Hey, you can't do that." And I had to embarrass that coach. I felt bad embarrassing that coach a little bit, but no, you do not get to talk to me and try and pit me against Will. And
Yeah.
you don't try and make my partner look bad by kissing up to me. Never. Not going to work. And I risked a lot that night, only because I thought, when I said it, I go, he might come kill me.
Yeah, hey,
But
Rod,
anyway,
one
so
more
take
thing.
care of
One
your
more, no,
partners.
that is true, by the way. That's a true story. But Rod, I know you talked about a little bit of post game, but dig into that a little bit, because post game goes a long way, especially in those games where maybe you don't understand what was going on. Maybe there's a call that you didn't understand. Maybe there was something going on with the coaches or whatever. I think post game goes a long way, especially with the crew. You could be working with a younger guy. You could be working with something. I think sometimes we just go in there and say, "Oh, great game, guys," and you
Yep.
get dressed and go home. I think a lot of times when you work with other guys, and especially the younger guys, and they don't understand what's going on, I think that's a good time for us to fill them in and let them know like what we saw and how we can help them. I think it goes a long way. Post game, I think some people just take off their, take the jersey off and go home, but a lot of times we'll sit there for 10, 15 minutes before we even start getting dressed
Yep.
and talk post game.
Absolutely. And that brings me to another point. One thing that we didn't talk about really was halftime. And halftime can be just as valuable, right?
Yep.
Because we've had our pregame. Halftimes are, and Will and I have had this opportunity a bunch of times where it's like, what's going on with our game, especially a game that gets a little slippery, gets a little sticky, it gets a little weird. I had a game like that at BCC last year where teams were getting chippy. The ball wasn't going to the basket, right? It's just one of those games where you're just like, I have a headache and no one likes this, and can I go home and I want a burger? And so what we decided was we're going to come out, and at halftime, I brought the captains together and I said, "Hey, look, no more stupid stuff." And, they're high school kids, right? So they look at you like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Like, what stupid stuff? It's like, no more chipping, no more bullshit, none of it. And the coaches are looking at me like, why are you talking to the captains? So I bring the coaches together, but I don't bring them into a huddle. I bring them to I kind of give them one of these, like, get in a little closer. They come to the edge of the coaching box. And from our reporting box, I say, "Hey, look, talked to both captains, warned both teams. No more stupid stuff. No more funny business. I'll put an end to it." Okay. So now everyone knows. And yeah, I'm being a dick, but you know what? I'm being a dick to protect my basketball game. And I try not to be a dick, but I felt like that was the time. Okay, have to be a dick. So sure enough, 3.5 minutes into the third quarter, we get a crash at midcourt, and some of you guys were at this game, and it was a Mercer Island kid and either a Beach or O'Day kid, and they get tangled up, right? And as they get up, one kid kind of sticks his leg out, so the other kid kind of, tries to drag him along. And I don't even mess. Like, it's whistle and it's double T. You get one and you get one. No questions. No questions from the coaches. No questions from the players. I said it. We set the table. If this happens, right? It's like parenting. If you do this, this is going to happen. So sometimes we just have to set the table and say, look, if this happens, we're going to penalize, and then follow through with the punishment. And after that, our game got better. Definitely more because the ball went into the basket more than anything I did, but we did our best to get rid of those kind of trouble spots.
Hey, Rod, was that Rainier Beach Mercer Island game? Was that did you get observed that game?
Yeah, yeah.
I think Jeff Shelton observed you on that game, but he's not going to tell you that. He's not going to come on here. But I remember that, and I remember I got a story about that, but I'll leave that alone, Jeff. I'll let you.
Jeff's like Rod's out there being a little.
Yeah. Don't say that, Jeff. Don't say that, Jeff. We're gonna leave that alone, Jeff. No, Jeff, don't do it. Don't do it, Jeff. You're good. Don't do it.
All right.
But no, but thanks, guys. I appreciate all this. It was good stuff. I'm going back dark.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks for being on,
Appreciate you
Will.
guys.
All right, anyone else? A couple more questions, then we're gonna wrap it up.
Rod Augustavo.
Jeez.
Most embarrassing moment with a coach.
Most embarrassing moment with a guy. We were trying to get done by 7, not midnight. I mean,
All right, then. All right. How about a
my-
funny story with a coach, and maybe how you luckily got out of it?
I've gotten lucky out of it a lot of times. I remember once. There are some of us who remember Jeff Nelson, former Mariner relief pitcher. Remember Jeff Nelson, 6'6" guy.
Yep.
And he and I are doing a game at Mercer Island, and Ed Puppel was coaching there, and it was a very tense game, like one of those Mercer Island Issaquah battles. And there's a 5-second call right in front of Mercer Island's bench, and Jeff Nelson is the trail. And I'm slot opposite, and I'm thinking, that's got to be a 5-second call. This kid's had the ball for 5 seconds. He's in a double team, and I'm thinking 6, like 7, like Coach Peppel's head's about to explode. And they have the poor Issaquah player trapped, and it's a violation. I mean, it's a violation. And Jeff blows his whistle, and I'm thinking, okay, there it is. And he goes, timeout blue. And he gives the timeout to Issaquah and then runs away to the other side of the court. And I walk over, and Ed's like, how can you do that? That's a 5-second call. That's a 5-second. And I'm thinking, I'm going to have to tee him. And I don't want to tee Ed Puppel. This is not my responsibility. So he's screaming. And I'm thinking, what do I say? And I was like, hey, look. I said, Coach, Jeff's a baseball player, man. 3 strikes, 4 balls. He can't count to 5. And I left it at that. And Ed looks at me, and he waits for a second. He gets that twinkle in his eye, and then he just screams as loud as he can, you think that's funny? And I just walked away. So there's one for you. 3 balls, 4 strikes. Jeff Nelson can't count to 5. Also, when some of you know Jeff Bjornstad, who's also a not so tall referee. When Jeff and I would do 2-man games at Mercer Island back in the day, the student section would say, oh my God, we got the fucking little Ewoks again. And it was me and Jeff Bjornstad.
Jeff the ref.
I had
All right.
games with Jeff the ref last year, Rod, and he told that story on the drive up to the gym and back to the gym, and then at the next game, he told that story again on the drive up and on the drive back. Like, he loves that story about the Ewoks.
Well, you can tell Jeff Bjornstad that I remember when we would do games at Bitter Lake, and he and his brother wanted to go home, so they would just, every time they would run by the game clock, those running time game clocks that kind of spin, they would put their thumb on it and